Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to my channel. It's Brittany here with another video to help you guys live a happy, healthy, awesome life, whether you're in a wheelchair or not. And today I am going to clear up the confusion that I caused with my video I did 2 weeks ago about misconceptions about being paralyzed. In that video, in misconception number 1, I talked about the fact that it's a misconception that people that are paralyzed don't have any movement in their legs. And in that video, I talk about how people have involuntary movement below their level of injury called spasticity, and that is how people can move their legs and sometimes use it to their advantage when they're paralyzed. What I didn't say in that video is that some people do in fact have voluntary control below their level of injury because they're an incomplete injury and have preserved either motor or sensory function below their level of injury. And I think I just confused more people than I actually helped by that misconception and not explaining it properly. So I'm going to do that today. I'm going to talk about what is the difference between an incomplete injury and a complete injury when you have a spinal cord injury, and how are those two things determined, so that anybody that watched that video, I can put a link to this video in the description and just say, hey, in case you're confused, you can go watch this other video. In the first part of the video, I'm just going to define what complete and incomplete is, just a very general definition of them. Then I'm going to talk about the different levels of paralysis in a scale called the American the American Spinal Injury Association Impairment Scale, and that's basically how doctors diagnose spinal cord injuries these days, and the different levels and how they are determined. And then I'll talk about why I don't think that the classification is all that useful for people that are paralyzed. So just to get started, let's talk about just general definitions of what a complete and incomplete spinal cord injury is. So probably the way it sounds is obvious. A complete spinal cord injury means that you have no motor or sensory function below your level of injury, wherever that is. And an incomplete spinal cord injury means that you have preserved either sensory or motor function below your level of injury. And in the American Spinal Injury Association Impairment Scale, if there is any level at which the sensation or motor function completely stops, then you are still considered a complete paralysis. So if you have, say you're paralyzed at T1 and you get some function back, to T8, but then your function stops after that and you have no motor or sensory function after that level, you're still considered a complete injury, which I'm not really sure why, because I don't know. It doesn't really make that much sense to me, but this is how they determine it. And it's, I guess, probably just a useful thing for doctors. So in the American Spinal Injury Association Impairment Scale, there are 5 levels of function that you can be diagnosed with. And it's just called the ASIA scale for short. There's ASIA A, ASIA B, ASIA C, ASIA D, and ASIA E. And in ASIA A, it is the complete diagnosis. So you're a complete injury and you have no motor or sensory function that is preserved below the sacral segment C4, not C4, that's up in your neck, S4 and S5. So the reason that that's considered complete is because that is the last area of your spinal cord that any nerve roots come out of. So if you don't retain any function below that level of injury in that area in the sacral region, then they're saying that there's no information getting through your spinal cord from your brain all the way to the bottom. And so they do what's called a rectal examination to figure out if you have any motor or sensory function left in that area. And if you don't have the ability to contract against a gloved finger inserted into your rectum, and you don't feel deep anal pressure, and you don't have any sensation in the rectal area, then you are considered a complete injury. I don't know that that's all that useful, because I'm like, what if somebody doesn't have rectal sensation, but they still have leg function. I have to talk to my friends to see if there's anybody who has preserved sensory and motor function in their legs and doesn't have any in their rectum. I'm curious to know that. I think it's sort of an antiquated way to diagnose a complete injury, but that's the way it's completed. And then the incomplete injuries are all based on tests done in different areas of your body. So they test sensation and motor function. They test dermatomes, which are just patches of skin that all are innervated by a single nerve root coming out of your spinal cord. And then they do the same thing for motor function in myotomes, which are muscle fibers that are all in one area that are contracted by one nerve root coming out of your spinal cord. So they test dermatomes, which is sensation. Then they test myotomes, which is muscle, and then they do the rectal exam. I got totally way-sided in between me talking about the different levels in the ASIA scale. So we talked about complete, which is ASIA A, and then there's B, incomplete, which is sensory function preserved but no motor function preserved below the neurological level, wherever your spinal cord injury is, including the sacral segments, S4 and S5. So you have some sensory function preserved, but you don't have any motor function. Then there's ASIA C, incomplete, which is motor function that is preserved below the neurological level, and more than half of key muscles below that neurological level have a muscle grade less than 3. So they test the strength of muscles in those different muscle groups that they test on either side of your body, and if the muscle strength is less than 3, then you would be an incomplete ASIA C. I think less than 3 means that you can move a little bit with some assistance, but you can't move against gravity on your own. And then above 3 means that you can move against gravity, so you could like lift your knee up. And then they continue to go higher in strength and put resistance on that to see if you can move against some resistance. So the levels of strength just go up with, I guess, different testing methods to see how strong your muscle is. And then the last level of incomplete injury is an ASIA D, which is motor function that is preserved below the neurological level, whatever your level of injury is, and at least half of the key muscles have a muscle grade strength of higher than 3 or higher. So they can be 3 or higher. And then the last one is ASIA E, which is just normal motor and sensory function. So you can have a spinal cord injury and come out of it with normal motor and sensory function. They don't include in here nerve pain, which would definitely be nerve damage of some kind. But as long as you can feel normally, based on a pin prick or the light touch test, which I think is a cotton swab, then they will consider that normal function. So those are the different levels: ASIA A, ASIA B, ASIA C, ASIA D, and ASIA E. A is complete injury, which means you have no sensory or motor function that is preserved below your level of injury at the sacral level. And then ASIA B, C, and D are the different classifications for incomplete. And then the last one, ASIA E, is normal motor and sensory function. So those are the different levels. And then they are diagnosed or determined based on the different tests that I was telling you about. In the sensory examination, they test 28 specific dermatomes bilaterally for light touch and a pinprick. And if you get a 0, that means no sensation. A 1 denotes impaired sensation of some kind, and then a 2 is normal. And so they'll give you a score based on all of those pinprick tests. And then the myotome test is 5 different muscle groups in your upper extremities and 5 different muscle groups in your lower extremities. I already mentioned before that they test the strength of your muscle based on whether you can move against gravity or resistance. And then you'll get a score out of 5, and 0 is no motor strength, and 5 is normal motor strength. And then the last one is that anal rectal examination, which basically, if you fail that, you are considered complete injury. And if you don't fail that, it doesn't matter what kind of movement you have, whether you can move your legs or if you get a 0 on all of that stuff. If you have preserved muscle function or sensation in your rectum, then you are considered an incomplete injury. So that is how incomplete and complete injuries are diagnosed and the definitions of them. I don't really think that this scale is that useful, honestly, because I think there's people that have levels of preserved function but don't have that rectal function that I guess would be considered a complete injury, even though they can do a lot below their level of injury. And I think there's people also that have some preserved bowel and bladder function, especially in that rectal region, that can feel when they have to go to the bathroom, but they have very little function other than that. And so I think it's not super, super useful. And I also think being classified as a complete injury is just a way to kind of strip hope from people, because when you tell somebody that they're completely paralyzed, it kind of removes any hope they have of regaining function. And in the studies, the diagnosis of complete or incomplete is a indicator of whether you're going to get function back. So for example, if you are diagnosed as Asia A and a complete injury, you have a 91.7% negative predictive probability for ever regaining independent ambulatory ability. So that means if you are paralyzed and you're diagnosed as a complete injury, you have a 90% chance you're not going to walk again. But statistics are just what has happened in the past. It's not what's happening for you. And you have to remember there's that like 9.5% there that did gain the ability to actually walk independently on their own. So you can't predict based on what your diagnosis is, what your future is going to look like. And I think you shouldn't lose hope based on that diagnosis. If you are diagnosed as a Asia D injury, then you have a 97.3% positive predictive probability of regaining independent ambulation after 1 year. So if you are an incomplete injury, you have a really good chance of being able to walk again in some capacity. So I think that is a good indicator of maybe what your prognosis is or what your future is going to look like, but it's not the only thing. And letting these diagnosis or this scale determine what your future looks like or what you think you're going to be able to do, I think is counterproductive. So I know for myself, I was diagnosed as complete, and I just assume that I will never ever regain any function again. So I never tried. I never tried to move anything. I never concentrated on different muscle groups. And even 20 years after I was paralyzed, when I started working out, I regained a lot of core function. And 7 years after I was paralyzed, I got bladder sensation back. So I was diagnosed as complete, and I still got some stuff back. Do I have something below the sacral section? No. But does that mean my injury is complete? I don't know. You tell me. Anyway, I just wanted to clear up that misconception that I caused when I was trying to clear up misconceptions about being paralyzed and give you guys the information for what it looks like to have a complete spinal cord injury versus an incomplete spinal cord injury. And I guess you could say that some people are sort of paralyzed and other people are kind of really paralyzed. Or if that's the classification we want to use from now on, is I'm kind of paralyzed and I'm actually paralyzed. I don't know. I like to use that sometimes. If I see somebody walking, I'm like, you're not really paralyzed, but they actually are. They have a spinal cord injury just like anybody else. And it's not their fault they have function back. I wish I did. So anyway, I'm rambling now. That's all I wanted to do today. I just wanted to clear up that thing that I confused everybody with and explain it in a better way. And I hope I did that. I hope this video was helpful. If you found it helpful, you can always leave me a comment. I love interacting with you guys down there. It's my favorite part, engaging with you guys. Until next time, guys, keep doing hard things, stay positive, and remember, you're not alone. I will catch you back here in another week. Bye, guys. Mwah.